Musculoskeletal pain is a conversation. It's the body's conversation with ourselves, right? So it is trying to talk to you about something. It is trying to say, I need some attention. I need to move in or out of something. I need some help here. I'm doing too much work or sometimes too little work. You can explore it for yourself. And I really want to empower people to do that. Because when people come to work with me, one of the first things I get them to do is write down the history, but also I ask, what does it feel like to live in your body? And if there's a particular issue, when does it feel better? When does it feel worse? What irritates it? Because they have to start working it out for themselves. I am just guiding them to do that.
We hear the word alignment a lot, but what does it actually mean and why does it matter in daily life? In this episode, I'm joined by Verity Bell, a human movement specialist with over 20 years experience helping people improve how they move and feel through gait, breath, biomechanics and more. We dig into what true physical alignment looks and feels like, how pain can be a message, and why curiosity and acceptance are powerful tools for change. This is a gentle but powerful conversation filled with relatable stories, practical tips, and useful ways of thinking about alignment, breath, foot health, and even gravity. We hear a lot in social media, all over the place, about the word alignment. We used to talk a lot more about posture, it's still around, but it's an interesting word because I think a lot of people are confused about what good alignment or alignment really is. And so we've got Verity here today to tell us exactly what that is. So let's start with going straight in to what do you say that alignment actually is?
So physical alignment is simply the way you arrange and position all the parts of your body throughout the day. So your bones, your tissues, and your muscles. And there is an ideal range of movement that when you're in this range, you are more efficient energy-wise. You have less strain and pain with your muscles because you're using the leverage of your bones with gravity and with the earth in the best possible way. You feel more powerful because you are more powerful. When the bones are put in the right positions, the muscles can contract and lengthen in their ideal ranges, and you feel more at ease in yourself generally. So if I give you an example in real life, because it's quite hard to, if you take a kind of leisure sport, so something you do regularly, maybe it could be football, like frisbee, some kind of throwing, or a racket sport. I'm going to take racket sport because I've just played a game of paddle, which I love. So it's that moment when you hit that perfect shot. And I can tell by the sound of it that it's powerful, but in that moment, it feels powerful and quite effortless. Yeah. And the reason it feels effortless in that moment is because what you have done is you've arranged all the bones in your body from your feet to your head in this ideal range of motion with gravity, with the floor and with movement, so that you are using your bones as leverage with these forces, as opposed to when you're always behind the ball or in front of the ball and you're rushing and you just have to do that extra effort and really sort of put your back into it, and or you're picking up your child or that heavy bag and you're rushing and you're not in the right alignment and the child feels so much heavier or that bag feels heavier and your muscles complain and you can feel the extra effort. So I teach people, if they've been knocked out of alignment or they've just lost that connection, that relationship with themselves, how to get back into that alignment. And it is different for everyone. It's unique because I've taught like tens of thousands of bodies in my 20 years and I've never seen a body that's exactly the same. There are patterns, but it's individual. So you have to find out what works for you as an individual.
Which is always the sort of answer of what length is the piece of string, isn't it? Which is so, it's an absolutely accurate answer. And delving into how your body works, how you feel in your body, what works for you, so on. It's quite a journey to get there, particularly when there are issues. And I myself have been in the situation where you are desperately scrabbling around trying to find someone who can see the whole picture, who really understands what's going on. And we're going to come on to that kind of how you know when you're not thing. I love your example there about paddle or tennis, whatever, because being particularly poor at it myself, you know that feeling absolutely, where your body is not in the right position. You go for it. I don't know if I can use my hypermobility as a bit of an excuse, because I can't quite know where my body is in space. And I go for it. And, you know, the ball ends up hitting like completely the wrong part of the racket. It makes a dreadful sound and then sort of flops. And you think, oh, this is so bad. But, you know, there's a lot in that anyway, obviously, that I was saying. But it is a really good analogy, because when it's good, it feels really good. And it's possible, I think this is important, to feel good and for that to work. And I would say, and I don't know if you would agree, that it's possible to feel that way at any age.
Yes.
It's just getting to that point through your awareness.
And you're not going to feel in alignment all the time, you know, we're just not. But I think the ability to keep bringing yourself back to alignment, and that's going to change as you age. That's going to change with injury. It's a constant conversation. That's kind of my main, what I want people to take away, is building a more intimate relationship with the parts of your body in relation to gravity, because we're not really taught that. Actually, in education, we're kind of taught the opposite, to not listen to the body.
Absolutely. And the acceptance of the fact that things will change. So I saw a post recently on someone talking about their frustration with where they've found themselves at this age, what's happened to their body, how there's so many myths out there about what you should be. And I find myself in that position too, where I was absolutely beating myself up but everyone around me is doing this and they all seem fine. And, you know, which is obviously nonsense. But at the time, it feels really intense. And it was because, as you say, I was totally ignoring the signals from my body.
Yes. And I think, you know, I've got a very wonky body. That's why I've sort of delved into this world so deeply. You know, one of my legs is slightly shorter. I've dislocated the shoulder like 20 times. I've got a slipped disc. I've broken my leg twice. You know, I've got slightly twisted pelvis because I never crawled. I bum shuffled, so I had one leg,
me too,
sort of one knee out to the side and one knee straight, and that's actually affected the shape of the bone slightly. So part of what I do, I've got 7 steps that I really want to go through to help people, generalized steps. And one of them is acceptance. That's one of the first things that I talk about, because you have to accept where you are in order to then move forward and change. And, you know, for example, I have clients who have knee replacements and ankle replacements and hip replacements, and they often come to me after they're still in inflammation, they're still in a bit of pain, there's still lack of mobility, there's still fear there, but they've gone back to the surgeon time and time again, and they've told them they're all clear, it looks absolutely fine. So in my sessions, I have a conversation with them, because body therapy, it's all about talking, but it's about getting them to have a conversation with their body. And in that conversation, there's often a lot of tears, but they say, I wish it didn't happen. I'm still angry about it. I don't want this piece of metal in my body. You know, I don't want to have. And so that thought process, that conversation, the body doesn't understand the difference between what you're saying, imagination and reality. So it responds. So if you're constantly creating this image of I want to reject this part, the body will then do what you're saying, and it will create inflammation, and you will kind of dissociate from that part of your body, and then you have to compensate. So one of the ways I work, one of the first things I do with accepting is use a lot of visualization, because, you know, when I first originally started teaching, it was through yoga, and I did a lot of that stuff, and now we've got so many studies to prove that it works. Let me tell you about one of the recent studies that I did. It's so amazing. So they took, and there's so many, and I'll link all these studies in the show notes. So there's one recently where they tested finger abduction, so it's opening and closing your hand, and also elbow flexion, which is bringing your fist up to your shoulder, so a classic kind of bicep curl. And they got half the group to visualize this movement, sitting with their eyes closed, and half the group to actually do the movement, and then they had a control group. And the group that visualized the movement and didn't do any movement, their muscle strength increased by 35%. The group that actually moved, their muscle strength increased by 53%, and the control group had no difference. So we know, and there's so many studies, I can link quite a few. We know that what you think about your body actually changes its physical quality. So with these clients, I will get them to, while we are doing the movement, whole body movement with breath, to visualize them accepting with gratitude that this is where they are now. Yeah, this is life throwing these challenges at you. We've just got to accept where we are and then work from there, because there's a sense of surrender and there's a sense of then really knowing that they can work from this point forward.
And also by doing that, you are, there could be the framework of the, oh, well, that's a bit woo-woo for me, but you've just given clear facts. Scientific.
We've got the science behind
Everyone
it.
likes the word scientific. So let's go scientific facts. But what also it is doing is it's giving them permission to feel safer in their own body. We are stuck in these vehicles. They are what we have. Aren't we actually very lucky to have them? Yeah. But sometimes you don't feel so lucky because your vehicle's not quite as good as the Ferrari next door to you.
Yes.
But when you, as you said, as we talked about, when you have the acceptance, but also you have that permission to think, oh, so maybe this could be possible for me. As soon as that door is open, then it's like the floodgates open to possibility and increased positivity. And I find in my work, certainly people will just try a little bit more and then a little bit more. And they then are taking it for themselves. And that's very much where both, I'm sure you would agree, that where we are catalysts for their change. And that's why coming back to the Verity or Wendy trying to fix, I'm not in the therapeutic world, so I never see myself as even anywhere near that. But Verity trying to fix someone is completely the wrong mentality, because it really is about them initially getting in the headspace, as you're saying. I love that that's the first thing that's come up. And then because that feels possible, starting to do the work. And I think until you have that kind of visual signal and guidance, it's much harder to put in the work, and we are more resistant because we think, well, this isn't going to work, nothing else has worked for me before, it's too much like hard work, I'm not seeing quick change, which is again all the kind of narrative out there. And instead it's like, well, no, maybe we'll keep trying. And I know you're going to talk about those things. Could we just go back a little bit to where people can realize they're out of alignment? Because I think that's, what are the symptoms, conditions, feelings that could make someone more aware that alignment could be an issue for them? Because often they have the thing, and that's like, it's the thing, the sore shoulder or whatever. So if you could describe a bit.
I mean, that musculoskeletal pain is one example. So that's sore shoulder. Musculoskeletal pain is a conversation. It's the body's conversation with ourselves, right? So it is trying to talk to you about something. It is trying to say, I need some attention. I need to move in or out of something. I need some help here. I'm doing too much work or sometimes too little work. So that's one of them. And you have to, I just want people to understand as well that all science is trial and error. Okay. Because I think that's the other thing. People get helpless and they don't know what to do. You can explore it for yourself. And I really want to empower people to do that. Because when people come to work with me, one of the first things I get them to do is write down the history, but also I ask, what does it feel like to live in your body? And if there's a particular issue, when does it feel better? When does it feel worse? What irritates it? Because they have to start working it out for themselves. I am just guiding them to do that. And it's much more empowering when they're like, oh yeah, it's when I'm a client recently, always when I'm driving my husband to a party and my shoulders go up and I'm leaning, and she's got it now. And so she can really bring that alignment. She's noticed that her alignment in that moment has really kind of increased in physical activity. And so now she knows to check in for that, put a Post-it note on the wheel or something.
And is that her, is there something, you shouldn't talk about specifics, but is that something in what she's doing that's making her have that response? Is it bringing up anxiety of some kind about going to the party, for example?
There's a bit of anxiety, but we've also worked out it's to do with her. She puts her driving glasses on, and they're not quite the right prescription, so they throw off the
Oh,
nervous system. So there's quite a lot of, it's an investigative process.
yeah.
It's not a quick, like you were just saying. This, if you've been in this wonkiness for years,
Mm.
like me and you are slightly wonky people, that's why
Yeah,
we've got into this.
absolutely.
You have to just constantly check in with your body, and that's one of my next tips that I was going to talk about is to know when does your nervous system flare up, because when your nervous system flares up, you will go into your old cranky pattern. My husband and I, we had a fight the other day, and we don't fight that often, and we had gone to bed not finishing the argument. I got up and gone to the gym the next morning, and I got into the gym and I was literally like Quasimodo. I was so wonky, and I was like, oh my god, I'm back to how but I know that's not I know that's not true. I know how to now recognize it, what movements to do to pull myself back into balance. And by the end of my session in the gym, I was back to normal. And then I was actually in a better headspace to call my husband
and say, sorry.
Right? But your nervous system is a key part of this.
Yeah.
And that's part of the visualization that I was talking about before, because if you can calm your nervous system down, your muscle, whole body relaxes. For the people listening now, if you notice where you are in your body quickly, and then really just tense one of your fists as hard as you can now, and then check in with the whole body. What you should notice is there's a subtle tension, or maybe not so subtle, that comes in through the whole body just from clenching one part of your body. If you now completely relax your fist and check in, take a deep breath, see then, can you feel that there's a sense of a relaxation that happens? Because we are one tissue. We've been taught in school that we are separate parts. It's just one tissue, and everything is communicating with each other. So to notice when the tension comes in and to try and relax those muscles helps with the imbalance as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely feel that. And I think there is so much. And I think it comes down to the medical industry as well, separating everything out, brain separate from body. People are like, nervous system, well, kind of what's that got to do with it? Well, pretty much everything.
But all the science now is coming on board with this, this sort of old ancient teachings of yoga. Can I just say one thing about that tension? Is I think that's why people are moving away from the word posture, because people think it's a fixed position. Yes. And you've created some tension. And I do have clients, and that is one of the myths out there. I do have clients that have come into me and say, but I've been told to pull my shoulder blades back and lift my chest. And now they've got chronic shoulder pain, but also their breath pattern is imbalanced, because when we do this, we're pushing our shoulder blades into the back of our ribs and compressing the back of our ribs, so we can no longer use our back breath, which should always be part of our breathing when we need it. Or they've said, I'm told to hold my core in, but they're doing that fist movement. So there's a tension throughout the whole body. And so then we're not able, a body should be relaxed and should be able to contract and release and respond to whatever we're doing. And if we're tense, then it's not able to do that. And then we lose that mobility.
Yeah, so true. And I think that, for example, that, is it Victorian, sit up straight, sit tall, and even the up straight, it's complete, well, we're not straight. So you can't sit up straight, but that sort of forced thing, and you hear it all over the place still. And if you're doing that and you're rigid, oh my goodness. I mean, just as bad as being in a slouch.
Yeah. I mean, straight is, people again are moving away from that word, but one of my tips that I will let me go into one of my tips now, which is having a better relationship with gravity.
Yeah.
Because gravity is this huge invisible force, right, that affects us from the minute we're born, and we barely give it any thought. But if we're doing a quick exercise now, wherever you are now, listening to the podcast, standing or sitting, if you imagine that gravity suddenly gets quite a lot heavier, let's actually imagine that we are carrying something on our head, something heavy on our heads. How would you naturally respond now to imagine having some heavy bag or heavy basket put on your head?
I would be straining.
You'd be straining, but which way would you go? Would you kind of collapse down, or would
Absolutely,
yeah,
exactly.
Oh, you would.
Yeah, I think I would be resisting it. But so yeah, no, it's the opposite. I'd be resisting it. So I'd be pushing upwards because I'd feel the weight of it coming down.
Yes. But so that's where it's the nuance in the expression, is that when we put a heavy weight, we actually want to move up to counterbalance it. If you see anyone carrying something heavy on their head, they've actually got a lovely elongation. They're meeting gravity. So that's the kind of alignment. We do need a sense that gravity is always there, because if we're not aware of gravity and we fall down, and my head's now forward on my ribs, I'm having to, if you imagine I put a weight now on my head, my neck and my back, like you were just saying, has to create a whole load of tension to hold me there, because I'm not in alignment with gravity. And one image I like to give a lot of my clients at the beginning is that of a Roman pillar. Now, it's a good image because it is aligned with gravity and it's well balanced. And so it stands for thousands of years. Where it breaks down is it's quite static, and we're never static. But then if you imagine the Leaning Tower of Pisa, because it's leaning now, gravity is pulling it down. So they have to build a structure within it, which is countering and pulling it back or pushing it back against gravity. And that is what happens in our bodies. So let me give you a quick case study. I had a lady who came with really terrible Achilles pain and calf pain and forefoot pain. And she was on her feet a lot for work. And when we looked at her alignment standing, she was leaning forward like that Leaning Tower of Pisa. So her head, when we put a line down, was actually right above her mid forefoot. So all that weight was going down into the forefoot the whole time, pressing to the floor. But like the Leaning Tower of Pisa needing a structure, some of her muscles were having to pull and contract to pull her back to counteract that gravity pull. And that was her Achilles. So she was then stretching, because that's what she thought. But actually, because she was leaning forward and the angle of her shin was forward, her Achilles and her calf were actually long, but they were constantly trying to contract. So they were painful and exhausted. And they were saying to her, please listen to me. Please, can you adjust? So when I said to her, okay, let's find your head, find your ribs, and anyone can do it now, actually listening, because this is the check-in that I get my clients to do throughout the day. I get them to put a little, some people like to put an alarm on their phone or put post-its around their workplace or their home, is as you're sitting or standing now, where is your head relative to your rib cage? Is it forward? Is it back? Is it left? Is it right? Where is your rib cage relative to your pelvis? Is it forward? Is it back? Is it left? Is it right?
And if they struggle to feel that, to sense is it possible to add in another way of looking at that? Because I'm thinking the iPhone's good for this.
Yes.
Take photos.
Exactly. So take photos, use mirrors, because we do need a visual. So this client of mine, just to come back to this client, when I got her to come back and we used a mirror, and actually I took a photo of her and showed her, and she was shocked. She was like, that's not how I stand. And I was like, well, that's what it is at the moment. It might not always be, but maybe when you're teaching, you're so enthusiastic, you lean forward to express yourself. But this is causing a detriment to your body. So you need to be able to stand back. It's not bad. I'm not saying any of this is bad. So leaning forward is not bad inherently. It's if you do something excessively. Anything that's excessive or dominant becomes dysfunctional, right? So our bodies are designed to reciprocate. We're designed to go backwards and forwards throughout it equally, side to side equally. It's when we get stuck in one position and our body's saying, hello, I'm communicating to you. Can you listen to me, please? Please, can you adjust? And that's why at home, I'm saying to people, play around with it. Like gravity that is what's often going on, the alignment with gravity. And we're never static, we're never fluid, but be childlike with it, play around with, where am I? Then the other nice image I like is the stones that people balance on the beach sometimes.
Yes.
Because they move a bit, they wobble, they're kind of fluid a bit, but they're balanced. So your head is a stone, your rib cage is a stone, your pelvis is a stone. And I know it's hard when you've never done this before to be like, I don't know. So yeah, take videos of yourself, take photos, make sure it's straight. And what's quite useful is to then draw a line down the center of your body, so you can really see whether you're over one side, or when you do it from the side, you can notice, oh yeah, my pelvis is really far forward from my heel bones. And there's loads on my Instagram actually. And there's an example of this particular client on my Instagram. I'll pin it at the top. So you can see, and you might, when you look at her, you might say, well, she's leaning a bit, but not that much. But it's the nuance, the subtleties of these alignments over time, which makes a really big difference. So when we brought her back and she was stacked and she could feel these parts of herself in relationship to gravity with the earth, first thing she said was like, I feel like I'm falling backwards.
Yes.
I'm definitely not straight. And I said, look. So you have to use that visual. Gently look. with compassion, because I know sometimes it's really just uncomfortable to look at yourself. And I see that with all my clients when I show them the videos. They're like, oh God, oh. Studies show that successful people are people that are more likely to put themselves in uncomfortable situations, because that's when we grow the most. So be aware that you're going to feel uncomfortable and then just play around with it. So she got back over her heels. She was like, God, I feel my heels for the first time. The weight through her heels, her Achilles could switch off. Her weight was now balanced in her heels, so the pressure was off her forefoot, so that released. And then she was like, but my stomach muscles are working hard and my lower glutes are working hard. And I was like, yes, that's the muscles that weren't working before.
Good.
Because the Achilles was working too hard. Yeah. So what, the question isn't what position do I need to be in the whole time? It's what am I overusing? What am I underusing? Where am I with gravity? Which side, forward or back, right or left, twisting? And over time, it's not going to happen straight away, but you will build a better relationship and understanding with yourself and your patterning, so that then without knowing it, when you're out and about, you're like, oh, I'm just going to, when you're waiting in a queue, where are you? Oh, I'm really still on my right forefoot. I'm going to play around with what happened, and just explore that. Oh, that feels better. And listen to the body, because it will often tell you, you want to, when you move into a position that alignment that feels better, the pain will often reduce. Or sometimes completely go away, unless there's a huge amount of information. But even then, if you're really attentive, you will notice something changes. Maybe the tension or the tone changes.
Yeah, it's a great example, because also oftentimes when you have particularly, or anything to be honest, but so she had particular things in her feet or foot, and oftentimes you'll say, how do I fix the foot? Going back to what we're saying about the sort of isolating the thing. And it underscores the whole point of the fact that the body is one holistic unit, as you said, and therefore looking at the symptoms as the cry for help rather than the problem, and finding out, trying to dig down to find out what the problem is. And I can say that in my funky body, it's always about alignment. Absolutely every single time, partly because it is more of a struggle for my body to get into good alignment because of hypermobility. And you've got to work, your body's got to work harder in different ways and so on. And that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But
which I'm happy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, it's every time I've had to pull back and say no. If something comes up, it's because of where my pelvis is. It's because, and so that's very difficult sometimes for people. I think your example there was really good because of what you were saying with the towers and so on. Everyone can feel that, and it's a great way of looking at alignment. But when it's something else in the body, perhaps it's harder to bring it back to alignment. And yet the way, for example, going back to the shoulder thing, the way your shoulder is sitting on your body is very much affected by that, the alignment, because is something having to work harder because it's too far forward. Therefore, you're getting strain elsewhere. Your lower back's tricky, your hips hiked, but you have no idea about it, and so on. And when I do that sort of image, look at myself, I don't need to take a photo now, and I still work with someone, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a much more of a gap here than here. Hadn't even noticed it, but symptomatically I'd started to feel things. So the first place we go to is the pelvis. And that's me, that's my body. But no, it's really, really, really useful. And it is great to start, I think, with static posture, with standing posture, to learn how it feels to have your weight back. And I say weight fully because I think a lot of people think that if the weight's in the heels, then everything else is going to align above it. But I think the key thing that I learned was that the pelvis particularly needs to be in the right place over the heels, because I was a banana. So I would have my weight in my heels. And I think I was a banana probably because I was trying to come away from hypermobile knees, so trying to not be into hyperextension of my knees all the time. So in a way I'd flop forward, and therefore I'd always find myself, and still sometimes do, like leaning my belly against the units when I was cooking or whatever. I was just like in a happy banana shape, but it really wasn't working.
Yeah. But for you, it's your pelvis. But for some people, for me, it's my ribs actually more than my pelvis.
Yep.
I have the same thing. My knees used to really lock back, and I used to really kind of fall into my lower back, you know, and you do have to work. It is work. And a lot of my clients say, why do I have to do this work? But eventually they say to me, oh, I love this work. I'm really enjoying it, you know, because I think we just assume that the body's gonna not need any attention. I don't know where we've got that from, but it's just, and also we're going to assume that not feeling anything, a silent, quiet body is the right body to have. Actually, no, it's a conversation, you know. You need to, you're never going to have a life where you just don't feel anything unless you've kind of really switched off that connection. But then that will probably backfire at some point along the line, because it's been designed evolutionarily to have as a feedback. You know, you put your finger in the fire, you pull it out because it hurts, and that's kind of what this conversation is about. Let me just give you a side to side one, because I think so much left and right is really, really key. So in my practice, I see a lot of issues from people being too far forward, whether it's pelvis or head or a whole body, like you just said. And I think it is partly because we're a fast-paced society, right? And we want productivity.
And screens probably as well.
And screens, right. But it also affects nervous system. So I work with people who've had quite a lot of trauma as well. And one of the things is finding that alignment. You can see it kind of like settles that the nervous system. But you're right, the whole thing has to be stacked.
Can I just say one thing in there? The one thing that really helped me was also thinking about when you're in alignment, because often we don't feel the bones so much, the joints. We can, but we'll often feel muscles. And for me, just the fact that when you're in alignment, they're in a happy balance of sort of pull and push, if you like. And therefore, it's more relaxing. Whereas one way or the other, there's an awful lot of, when there's a lean of any kind or a shape of any kind, those muscles are having to work so hard. And that's why eventually they're like, no, please give me attention. So the feeling of that, just the thought of that sort of pulley system either side, just being in balance, makes it almost feels relaxing knowing that. Whereas, you know, when you pull one way, it's harder or the other. So just to add.
Yeah. But you do want to be able to pull both ways, but you want to be able to find a balance between. Yeah, exactly.
So go side to side.
So the other thing I see is a real mismatch between the left and the right side of the body. So let me give you this client's story. She came to me with really painful right hip pain, and it had been going on for years and years, and she tried and seen loads of different people. And like I said, one of the things I ask people to write is, how does it feel to live on your body? And when she replied, she said, I call my left leg my grandpa leg or my ghost leg, which is such a good image already, right? So she's telling me she's disconnected from that, and it's quite feeble, maybe a bit old and weak. So we tested it, and she was much weaker on her left leg, and she cycled a lot as well.
Okay.
But she wasn't aware of that. So she was standing more favorably on her right. She did shift her left, but she like 70-30 throughout the day, and she stood a lot for her job as well, was on her right side. Plus, when she walked, because her left leg didn't feel connected, she would hike her right hip up. So her right hip was doing a lot of extra work. So when we started to get her to do just single leg, left leg stuff, standing, feeling the alignment, lots of strength. We didn't actually do that many sessions. I think we did maybe 2. She was quite diligent with her exercises. But also I said, when you're cycling, I want you to just push with your left leg. And she came back and said, I had no idea that I just wasn't pushing with my left leg. I was just cycling right. And I just had no idea. And I can't believe that I was doing that all these years. So just those exercises and that awareness, her pain went away. And she checked in with me recently, actually, to recommend someone. It's been 3 years, and she was like, it's not came back. But I know when I go into that place, I get a twinge, and I now know that I've just gone into that. Maybe she's stressed, there's trauma there. She's gone into that place, that secure place.
That's amazing, isn't it? Just taking a quick pause because I want to tell you about a new offer exclusively for listeners of this podcast. If you'd like to improve your mobility, strength, and learn more about moving well in daily life now and to train for your 90s, come and move with me in the Reclaim Movement membership. There's weekly live coaching in term time with hundreds of replays available, as well as hordes of 5 and 10 minute mini movement videos to follow throughout your day. I'm offering you a 15% discount on your first month's membership on top of the 7-day free trial. Go to reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to create your account and quote the code podcast15. Let's move together to feel better and keep doing all the things you love. The awareness piece for the small things is really interesting, because it's when you start to go down that rabbit hole where you think, I'm just going to watch, because when I was on my journey of discovery and thinking, okay, I'm doing all the right things, I'm doing all the exercise I should, I'm a really active person, blah, blah, blah. And then started to sort of delve into the world of, let's call it repetitive strain and these patterns, I just realized how much I did on autopilot. Sorry, you can see my cat's tail passing. He's just knocked the door to come in. Thank you. How much I was doing on autopilot, but also how much I literally did the same way every time, absolutely without thinking, over and over. And when you do see the body as a two-sided thing, we obviously, we have a side dominance, of course we do. But it then just starts making you realize, and even if you can't then particularly translate that to how it's having a ripple effect through your body, that sort of doesn't matter. You know that you've got the power to shift it up. So, even
which is all the wonderful work that you do. We can do a quick exercise now, actually.
Oh, yes,
which
please.
Really makes people, if everyone just cross your arms, like you're angry with something, or you just cross your arms, and now cross the arms with the other arm in the other way.
Yeah.
You're probably quite good at that, but yeah, everyone, and that expression you just did, for the people just listening, it was kind of like the eyes wide, and they're like, oh, how do I do that? That is what I work with people. So they've become so dominant without thinking in autopilot that they have to really think and rewire that connection to that side to change it. That's what it feels like to be over dominant on one side. And you are right, we do have a dominance, but and I can explain why we have a dominance, but being able to have a little bit of a check-in, just like I said before, check in with gravity, with the parts of your body, and also check in with, are you doing something too much on one side? Can you switch over? I'll give you some examples, but let me just give you a quick lovely client story. So this lady came to me with really bad right knee pain, and she had 3 kids under the age of 5. And she didn't have any time, but she was like, help me. And I was like, okay, well, I know what it's like having young kids. I presume with 3 kids under 5, you are picking up stuff from the floor all day long, food, toys, clothes, and your kids. And I presume you're getting on the floor quite a lot and coming up. She was like, yes. I said, so show me how you do that. And she was just doing it with her right leg.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, now I want you to do it the other way. So she was sitting with the kids on the floor, and she would sort of twist around and then put her right leg forward. I said, do it the other way, twist the left and use your left leg. And she was like, I can't. How do I do that? And we had to really kind of work through her doing that. And then the same with picking stuff up. She lunged with her right leg. So her right knee was saying, please can the left leg do something? So with that, because she was doing like 200 of those a day and a few little exercises of mobility, her knee pain disappeared. And I have to work with the clients with where they are at, because I couldn't have given her a 30-minute program. She wouldn't, I have to be like the stuff you do and Katie Bowman does. You find a way, and that's what I would try and do, stack these things into your day.
Yeah.
So in terms of symmetry, like even as people can do a quick check-in now as they're sitting or standing, have you got more weight on one hip than the other when you're sitting? Or as you're standing, have you got slightly more weight on one foot than the other? And again, you can shift around, because shifting helps you feel the difference between the two. And keep checking in with yourself. A client of mine recently said to me, oh God, I realize every time I'm driving, I'm really leaning over to my right butt cheek. And she said, I mentioned it to my daughter, and my daughter was like, you've always done that, Mum. She's like, I didn't know that, and it's sometimes it can be the small things, like where are you tripping yourself up, that sometimes can take a bit of time. Like, I'm doing all the right things. Well, you're not. Somewhere, something you're doing is bringing you back into the pattern.
And when,
so the tip,
sorry,
go on.
No, you go on. I don't really want to say.
So the tips I give people are, chew on both sides of your jaw. That's key for balance within the head alignment and the neck and the shoulders. Swing your arms equally when you walk. If you're out and about now but listening to the podcast, have a look around you, because you'll be amazed at how A, we're holding phones.
Oh, yeah.
B, I mean, it's funny with my kids when they were little, I used to be like, can you not hold my hand, please? Because I'm a mean mother, because I
You're
want to
pulling
swing
me
my
out of
arm.
alignment.
Yeah. But one arm will swing and the other arm won't. And this really key, that rotation element, to release through the ribs up through here, and for the breath, particularly alternating between sides and balance with the gait, when I do gait analysis. Make sure you're pushing off both feet equally as you walk, because often you will just push, like my client with the cycling, and we're not aware of it until we just check in. Oh God, yeah, I'm really kind of just like one of my clients worried the other day that she feels like her left leg's always dragging, and it was it's like she knew it intuitively, but okay, I just need you to push. Oh wow, I haven't. God, that feels really unfamiliar. Yes, because so now I just want you to do that for a while until we come our next session. And then things like cleaning, like can you clean, like wipe your surface, and all the stuff you teach, the beautiful stuff. Wipe your surface with your left hand.
The other hand.
Clean your windows with your left hand. It's hard work, and you can feel the weakness. You can feel the abs are weaker, the arms are weaker, the foot's weaker.
And I use on my shower screen to get the water off after, as I use one of those wipers, and I do it in a certain way.
I've got one that I never use it.
Well,
so
part of the reason I do, apart from a bit of pressure from the husband, no, because it's a competition who can make it the best. But part of the reason is because I always use it as an opportunity to use my right hand, because I'm left-handed. And actually, when you're doing something that is more accurate like that, because you're doing a long line, a turn, you've got to really be quite accurate. And over the time I've been doing it, I really have improved, and I've amazed myself at how I do. But also then I got to go right, it goes right down to the floor, so I did get my first squat of the day in, if the shower's the first thing. So it's just doing all those really bits important. And adding in and noticing. One thing I was just going to say as well, that was definitely a problem for me in bringing up little kids, was carrying my kids always on the same side of my body. And it became so alien to carry them on the other side. And the reason so I carried them on my right, because I am left-handed. So I would be doing with my left hand. And so therefore, again, another great challenge to try and do it the other way sometimes and see what you can do. Because it's amazing what we are capable of with the other hand if we start to train to do it, even if it feels awkward. And I kind of think that it's a bit like, it's really important. It's a bit like, having your bag on one side and then shifting it to the other. And it feels weird. It feels like it's going to fall off or whatever, but just do it for a while. And then
weird is okay.
And weird is fine. And so, exactly. Just see if you can make it a little challenge with yourself in a way.
Yeah.
Because
and that in itself is a check-in with yourself. I used to push my kids in the swings for hours, and I would always push with my right hand and my right arm, so I had to change it. And then it's like, oh, that's really, but in that moment, that's what I'm really encouraging, is you are connecting with your body and you're just having this moment with yourself, because, that those moments I teach meditation. That is a meditation. So not, you're also getting all the benefits of meditation, checking with your body, checking with your breath, be in the present moment, it relaxes your heartbeat, it reduces blood pressure, all these little things, but you're also just checking in with the balance right to left. And I think, that's why every kind of well-balanced spiritual practice, I have to be careful with what I say here, has some kind of balanced movement practice. Yoga, Tai Chi, Aikido, tribal dance, Kei dance, because we do actually have a slight bias to lean more in the upper body on the right side, because our liver is there and it's densely huge. We've got a bigger lung on the right. We've got an extra lobe on that right lung. Our right diaphragm is a lot bigger, and the tendon that connects the right side. So we intuitively do want to lean slightly onto that right side. Now, it doesn't always translate in terms of injuries, or maybe you can be on the right, but you can be leaning onto. So there's lots of different ways, but the breath seems to have that pattern, unless there are some people whose organs are flipped the other way around.
Oh gosh.
But what is really fascinating about this is it can change the way you think and the way you see the world, because if you're very dominant on, say, the right side of your body, that means the left brain governs the right side of the body. So you end up slightly using the left brain more. And the left brain has different qualities to the right brain. So the left brain is more binary, so it thinks more black and white. It likes to categorize, it likes productivity, it's quite productive, it's convergent, so it likes to do the details, the small things. but it can't do what the other side of the brain does, the right brain, which connects with the left body, which is bigger picture, see the nuance in the world, see the long term. Yeah. So if you're left-handed, you will have more ability to that, and that's why there's a sort of idea that left-handed people are slightly more creative because it's a slightly more wider. But we need both sides. I'm not saying one is right or wrong, but there's this fantastic guy called Ian McGilchrist. I'll put it in the show notes, and his theory is that we have become very left brain dominant, right body dominant. Majority of the body people are right-handed and more dominant on that side, potentially because of this asymmetry in the body, which we need to be able to move well. But that has created the society the way it is, which is goal driven, very productive, very categorized, likes to kind of put things in boxes and
very
polarize,
very binary.
Absolutely. So the idea here is that if you're balancing your body, which is potentially what all these spiritual practices knew intuitively, you have to have some kind of practice where you're just checking in, because we've got a bias. We all have our biases, right? Bring yourself out of the bias. And then maybe, some clients tell me, I'm getting on better with my husband. I'm not sweating the small stuff as much. I'm not, because they're starting to have this cross connection in the brain and be able to focus on the small stuff, but also see the bigger picture of how that's affecting long term and the world around them, right?
Fascinating, really fascinating. Absolutely. Yeah, that really explains a lot. Why my productivity is so low.
Well, yes. But actually a lot of my left-handed clients are still right dominant in that area, so you might still have, well, who knows, everyone's different, but
no, it was amazing, really, really interesting. So
you might be improving your mental health and the outlook on the world, and be a bit more tolerant when you do this. So you think, oh God, I'm gonna have to wipe my table with my left hand. No, this is going to make me more tolerant to the world and have better relationship with myself and ultimately everyone else around me. And that's the theory anyway.
It's the theory, but also one lovely way to visualize improving. I always think I always talk about congratulating yourself as well when you've done something that perhaps you wouldn't have necessarily, or your automatic body wouldn't have chosen to do, because there's such an important feedback loop happening all the time, as you're saying. But as simplistically as saying, oh well done, you did it, at least you did it, at least you chose to do it. How you did it doesn't really matter. The point is that you made that choice. Good for you, because then I think it does come back and you think, I'm more likely to do that again, because I'll get a lot of congratulations afterwards as well.
That's a really good tip. All these tips really, really help.
It's so important. So move on to another of your tips. What have we not covered yet?
Right. So symmetry, explore that as much as possible. Relationship with gravity. Relationship with your body parts, but not without tension. So see if we can find a nice sort of constant movement. Visualization and how you're talking to your body. Just a quick tip. Last week, one of my clients who's I'm working with her with foot and stuff, and I was like, right now we're doing the balance, and she was like, oh. I was like, okay, so what image now have you got? What conversation are you going there? Let's change it and visualize yourself balanced and foot wide and all the foot pressures. So that comes to the next one, actually, is foot awareness. So they did a brilliant study. I like adding science here, but where they put people's feet in buckets of ice until they were numb, and then they got them to stand up, and none of the muscles fired. So the sensitivity of your feet, as in the responsiveness from your nerves in your feet, actually strengthens the whole body. I mean, I've had that experience. I don't know if you ever, but I fallen asleep in a weird position. I fell asleep in child's pose once, actually, when I was a yoga teacher. So that's kneeling on the floor. And then I went to stand up and collapsed because it was so numb, it was no connection. So they especially for the aging population, stimulating your feet, walking as barefoot as possible. I know you teach all this stuff. Getting lots of textures under the feet. You can do brushing, you can do rolling. They've done a recent study with Parkinson's, which is really dear to my heart because I cared for my mum at the late stage Parkinson's, where they're putting little semicircles under the big toe, the baby toe, and the four corners of the feet, and their walk is better, their stride length is better, there's more sensory response, the feedback exactly through the body. So strong feet equals a healthier, stronger body. So there's loads on my Instagram, but you do a lot of work. Do some footwork. Play
Yes.
around with your
Love
feet,
your
move your
feet.
toes, love your
And
feet. Yeah.
it's just appreciation for these little things on the bottom of a massive body, you know, to bring it right down to that. And I think understanding that they can go wrong so easily because, and again, it's the, you know, when I talk about footwear, I'm very careful because this, you know, people see the barefoot side of things again as a bit woo, a bit out there. And it's really not, because for all those reasons you were just saying, if we don't get that feedback, it can be purely mechanical, really, if you don't get that feedback. So being barefoot, as in no shoes, is really important. And some people actually lose the ability to do that at all. They're fearful of that. It feels really uncomfortable. And it's, I always encourage and say, but that you can get that back. You can start to enjoy the feeling, and there's lots of different ways you can do it. And again, it's the small changes, the just trying, and being open to trying. Because, for example, walking on the grass, you know, much more comfortable surface. It's a bit like the outdoor carpet, but a lovely way for you to sort of stimulate. There's always like slight undulations, very slight, but it can just help you to just start to bring those nerve endings back to life a little bit, because we can actually lose the nerve endings in the feet, which give that importance. And then if we think about what we were talking before about pillars and so on, then how does your body know, your brain know where you are in space, if the foot that is the contact with the ground, if it can't tell you what's happening? And I think it's to make the connection with falling. Everyone's going to keep falling. I think falls prevention is a tricky area, in that we can't prevent falling, and falling will happen. How we fall is another thing, but that, you know, to be giving the most information to our brain and our balance system about what's happening, it starts and almost ends in lots of ways with the, you know, the majority is coming from that foot. And if it's in a squishy, sorry to go on, but I went I think I've said it in a previous episode, so apologies for repeating myself, but I went to go and buy some shoes with my son recently, and you could always get, he doesn't want to wear barefoot shoes. Fine, I'm not going to pressurize him to do that.
My kids won't either.
No, but that's fine. They'll come onto it eventually. But we were looking for something with a nice thin sole that was really sort of simple, allowed lots of movement, and you could always find that before. And we were just faced with this wall of massive, squishy, high heeled. So when we come back to that Leaning Tower of Pisa, everyone is a Leaning Tower of Pisa if they're having to counteract the fact that the back of their shoe is higher than the front, literally all the time that they're walking. And it, like you were saying, it's the nuance. It's the fact that it's subtly happening a little bit, a lot of the time, that then adds up to becoming a problem. So I think I love the fact that you brought feet into it, because it is so key. And you know, we've got to love them.
And going slowly and gently, like, you know, do little bit at a time, because I have quite a few older clients and their feet have become very sensitive. I think our skin does become more sensitive as we age, but also it's because they have just worn shoes, that generation, their whole life. So it does have to be slowly and gently, but it's joyful. Like, I love my barefoot shoes when I'm out and about with rocky surfaces. I get, you can feel the stimulation. It like invigorates you, and it's joyful, that relationship that you have with the earth. But having said that, I don't always recommend barefoot shoes. It does depend on
not right
the
for
person.
Everyone. Absolutely.
And pounding pavements, I think some squish is good. But your kids are young, so we want to give them the best possible start for them be able to stay flat. But for example, if I had an older client who's really just worn heels their whole life, I'm not going to just put them in barefoot shoes. I'm not going to manage that. So maybe we will start and just slowly work our way down, or, you know, you have to have the right goals. Goals is key as well, you know, and that's something I'm quite an impatient person that I've had to really learn with my clients, like reading because if I give them too big goals, they're just going to get overwhelmed. So you have to kind of do slowly by slowly, but also noticing the changes. And that's something I stay curious. Like with a lot of my clients, I will say, how are you feeling? Yeah, I have to really dig down. That pain's not there anymore. You forget so
Yes,
quickly when it happens. So I have to point it out to them. Look
absolutely.
how far you've come. Oh yeah.
Yes,
Our normal becomes normal so quickly.
it really does. I had a client who came in with real tailbone pain and quite a lot of the ground movement. She was like, I can't go near it. I certainly don't want to try it. So once we built up some trust and confidence, and she was increasing her confidence, and we did movements sort of as close to and around about, so that she started to feel more confident. And yeah, as you say, literally a few months later, and I thought, right, I'm just going to ask. And so I didn't say anything about it for quite a while. And I knew there was one thing I wanted to try. And so I tried it, thinking I'm pretty sure she's not going to respond here, because I can see from other things. And she did it. And afterwards I said, you were on your tailbone right now.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh yeah, I haven't felt it. It's amazing, isn't it? But we do focus in on, it's amazing.
And
we focus in on the bad.
Yes.
And that becomes a repetitive cycle.
On the positive. Yeah, it's a human trait.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then
so you need people, or you need to have a structure for yourself to remind yourself. That's why gratitude practices are so important. And they physically have shown now that it changes the body, in that you release endorphins and your body relaxes when you're grateful of that. So yeah, so footwork is really, really part of everything that I do. Tongue work. So again, can I give you another study, just so people don't think it's so they know it's rooted in science? They did a study recently where putting your tongue in the right position increased the strength of this muscle test that they were doing, increased the muscle strength by 37%. And the correct
the muscles, not of the tongue.
No, sorry, the body. They were testing, I think, the hamstring. They were testing leg muscles. So they tested certain positions of the tongue, and when it was in the right position, which is having the tip of the tongue on the hard palate just behind the back teeth, the front teeth, and then having the tongue pressed to the roof of the mouth. Now, again, there's nuance with that. So some people can have more of a suction, but to have that pressure, because Newton's third law of motion, for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction, a bit like the leaning tower of Pisa, the gravity. So if gravity is pulling me this way, something is going to help to pull me that way, right? So when I've got a strong tongue that has an upward push to it, I feel quite stable and steady in this very important area. So then I can put more pressure through my muscles. It's a nervous system thing as well. So you can do this throughout the day. Is just notice where your tongue is and then play around with pressing it. Just be careful you're not thrusting it forward, because I find, and I do it within movement practice, so I'll often find I'm doing a harder movement practice and my tongue's kind of forward and down, and I'm like, why is this not kind of feeling connected? Oh, once I get my tongue in the right position, then I can really connect to that.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And I'm going to talk to my friend Jane, who came on here, who's a breathing retrainer, and she talks a lot about tongue position as well. And so I'm going to give her that study if she doesn't know about it, because she would love that as well.
Yeah. And so moving the tongue as well. So you might have your tongue more on the right side. So circling your tongue in your mouth, and I said chewing on both sides can really make a big impact. And then breathing was my last thing, because I do a lot of breathing work with people. Let's do a quick chest check-in.
Let's do a quick chest check-in, but I have the feeling that we've got another episode in this, because I'm mindful of time, but there was about 100 different questions there, even just about the tongue in relation to the body and breathing. So give us a quick breathing one, because then we both know we can go on.
I was just going to say, put one hand on your chest, upper chest, and then one hand on the upper back, so you can turn it around behind you. And then just take a deep breath in. And then all I want you to do is notice, were you breathing equally front and back? Because a lot of people I see have lost their back ability to breathe back, which is all lung, which is all movement. And again, that brings our weight back as well. So a lot of our people I see, and maybe it's the people I see that are in pain, so that's why they're, that's the patterning, but it's this forward sort of breath, and often it's very belly breath. There's a myth out there that belly breath is the correct breathing way to breathe. That is really not. It is correct when we're lying down, when there's no gravity needed to support us, when we're relaxed, but when we're moving and walking, the breath has to be up in the lungs, which is the top part of your body, not the lower part of your body. So
And
again, there's no right and wrong. It's about getting a good equal balance and be able to get into all areas of your body when you need it. So when you're reaching for that, when you fall off that curb and you're reaching for that something or other, your body can breathe into that area to support you. If there's no ability to do that, then you will topple forward, right? So yeah, it's a balance.
That's a whole nother layer, isn't it, to falling as well? Exactly. And I think what I found useful, particularly with assessing the breath, because we want to breathe as deeply into the lungs as we can so that we're getting really as much oxygen into our blood as possible, is where...
Well, it depends what you mean by deep. Because that gets slightly lost in translation, that myth, because then I have people only breathing down and they've completely compressed up here and there's no movement through here, and that creates breathing issues as well.
Okay.
But yes, we do. So deep, I think, is misunderstood for down,
right?
Instead of, can you
open.
Have a long...
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. Is once something that I found very useful was putting my hands on the lower part of the ribs either side. And I was doing this with my son actually the other day, but having the thumbs at the back and the forefingers forwards, and then taking in that sort of diaphragmatic breath, and seeing if your thumbs do actually move at all. And I find that great, not just because it helped me assess whether I was, but also it gave me the feedback. I'm always telling people, if something's not quite working, tap the thing so that your brain goes, oh, you mean that? And it's often glutes. I often find people are like, I can't feel anything. It's like, well, let's just see if we can bring that connection back. It's a really important
tool, that, to touch.
Yeah.
If you've lost the connection, use your touch and use your sight. So sometimes if I'm in the gym, I'm trying to reconnect something, I will kind of laser eyes on myself in the gym and see it, visualize it, see it, connect to it, and actually see that movement. So diaphragmatic breath, that's a really excellent exercise, moving back, and that really helps people with back pain, because a lot of people with back pain don't have the thumbs don't move back, so there's no
it's restricted,
a massive massaging movement with every breath.
And I think a lot of the way we see skeletons, and we see the rib cage and we see it as this massive,
the language
fixed thing wrong. That doesn't move at all.
A cage. Why? It's that language is already affecting us. I like to call it rib basket, and I just said rib cage, but rib basket.
Okay.
I don't know what it's the ribs are designed to move, and a lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, I've been told if I see any breath up here, I'm not breathing right. It needs to be belly breath." And they've got their breaths off. They've got sometimes voice issues. They've got neck issues. They've got anxiety, because we should be able to breathe. It's a beautiful design, this with evolution, that when we inhale, the air should lift us. Like when you're in the bath, sometimes you take a breath, it lifts you, right?
Yeah.
It should elevate and lift us throughout our day. And then when we exhale, our core should draw in, and because we're liquid sac inside, it also squeezes up. So with every proper breath, we're countering gravity the whole time, and we've got this sort of lightness in us, which is part of the alignment with the breath. And that just takes a bit of practice when we've lost it. And sometimes, that's why breath practice is useful, because we will lose that. I lose that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do see it all the time. And even people's relationship with their diaphragm and whether it is working well or not at all. It's a whole nother big...
I mean, it's always working.
Of course it is, because otherwise you'd be dead. But working optimally.
But where are you working? Are you working it more in the front and the back? Can you get this whole
lovely
area
expansion? The bellows, the full bellows that we...
I mean, I used to have a lot of back pain, and actually when I was teaching yoga, before I really understood biomechanics, I was doing lots of back bends because I could, but I wasn't breathing in that area. And so when I first started to get the breath into the back, it got rid of all of my back pain, but it just felt so joyful and exciting to be like, oh my God, I haven't done that for 10 years. This is an area of my body that I've just foraged new ground, like going up Mount Everest and being like, It's like these things are so joyful. They will bring you well-being and joy when you explore it, but just little by little by little, just play around with it. I sometimes think people are so fascinated with what's out there, but what's going on in here is so incredible.
Yeah. And sometimes we're not even aware of the fact that that thing is limiting us until we work through it and notice it. It's like sort of parts of your spine being more rigid than others, and not even having like we talked about before, where the knee is causing you problems, but you haven't once thought about your ankle or your hip and what they're doing, and all that it's just this complete relationship between everything that's so important. And yes, sometimes you can't do all this necessarily yourself. You can't see it yourself. You're not trained to, of course not. And finding someone like you that can come and go, yes, I can see this, because you've got a trained eye. Finding that is really important, but there's so much you can also do. Hopefully lots of tips in this episode where you can just start to open that awareness floodgate, hopefully, to just be having that, like you're saying, just connecting in with that vehicle you're in, and saying that it's not all wrong, it's not all broken, it's not that it can't be fixed, because it's so easy to get into that really negative, where have I got this from? How did I get to this place? This is never where I wanted to be. And I appreciate all those feelings, and we can still go through dips, of course we can, but to try to stay on the side of inquiry, curiosity, and positivity is more likely to come.
I think curiosity is the key, like just open curiosity, and okay, I have got this limitation that might never change, but what can I work with it? And what can I do daily that will stop it getting worse and maybe improve it, but just keep myself as balanced as I can.
Absolutely. Very wise words. Really enjoyed talking to you, Verity. It's been absolutely fascinating. As I said, I've got about 100 more questions. So we definitely have a part 2 in the making. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful. And to everyone listening, as you said, I'm going to link lots of stuff into the show notes. If you're interested in reading that, then please do go and find them. They're always linked in whichever app you're in. And come and visit Verity's Instagram. It's very useful. There's a lot of more technical stuff on there, but it's still great to just make you think differently and perhaps see things. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.